then he's complaining to God. Jonah was angry. He was angry at God for saving the city. And then God sends a worm. And the worm eats the leaves that is covering him from the heat, the sun. Okay? And then God sends him another letter. He says, "Dear Jonah, hot enough for you? You care about the bush that gave you shade. I care about the people, the girls and the boys and the animals in Nineveh. Shouldn't you? Lots of love, God." Notice that he's just concerned with the worm that's eating the bush, but God is concerned about everybody that's in the town of Nineveh. Yes? Can you read this one? Okay, just give me a second. I'm going to just finish this off, then you can read it, okay? So what are some of the big things that you saw in the video here? What about the big fish? Very big fish? Very bad people in the town? Yes?
It was a whale.
It was a whale. And a whale is very big, isn't it?
It's not a big fish.
Isn't it? It's a whale, is it? Okay. What I found was God's very big love for the people in that town. Would you agree? God didn't want any of them to be lost. He wanted all of them to be saved. Okay? All right. Thank you for listening. Can I go back to your seats now? Hang on. Hang on. Give it to you. Okay. There you go.
Thank you, Auntie Carol. We are blessed today to have amongst us Angie and Remy Lemina. Thank you so much for coming. And our brother Remy will bless us with a special item.
Check, check. Happy Sabbath. Glad for me to give share special item to you all, and this is a beautiful song that I can share. Some the theme of the Bible is Jesus and how He died to save me. The plan of salvation assures us His coming back again. Are you ready for Jesus to come? Are you faithful in all that you do? Have you fought a good fight? Have you stood for the right? Have others seen Jesus in you? Are you ready to stand in your place? Are you ready to look in His face? Can you look up and say, "This is my Lord"? Are you ready for Jesus to come? Technology. The theme of the Bible is Jesus and how He died to save man. The plan of salvation assure us He's coming back again. Are you ready for Jesus to come? Are you faithful in all that you do? Have you fought a good fight? Have you stood for the right? Have others seen Jesus in you? Are you ready to stand in your place? Are you ready to look in His face? Can you look up and say, "This is my Lord"? Are you ready for Jesus to come? Don't cling to the world and its treasure. This earth will soon pass away. Oh, give Him your love without measure. He's calling you today. Are you ready for Jesus to come? Are you faithful in all that you do? Have you fought a good fight? Have you stood for the right? Have others seen Jesus in you? to stand in your place? Are you ready to look in His face? Can you look up and say, "This is my Lord"? Are you ready for Jesus? Are you ready for Jesus to come? Are you ready for Jesus to come? I'm ready. Thank you.
Brother Remy, a cappella only, okay? You prove you are so well with or without. Thank you so much. God bless you. And we be blessed. Now is the time for the second session. Are you ready? Good. Brother Bryan and Dr. Craig, it's your turn.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to see you all. And some of you were not here for our first session, so a special welcome to you as well. I'm glad to see you all here. And was saying at the beginning, you know, that it was kind of nice to be back in Dundas Church. I guess the first time I came here, this was not the building, but perhaps in 1971 or 2. So that makes me a very old man, doesn't it? But delighted to be here, and thank you for coming to worship today. I particularly were interested in the words of your song, Remy. The question of, are you ready? And do other people see Jesus in you? You know, one of the things that was very important in the early New Testament, that's not the PowerPoint. At least if it is, that's better. Okay. I thought I was talking on something else for a moment. What was really interesting about the early Christian church was that in a number of places there was concern about whether to embrace this or that aspect of their religious understanding of Christ and God and so on. And the Apostle Paul, in both his letter to the Ephesians and in his letter to the Colossian church, and Peter in his general letter to the church, 1 Peter, they were concerned about what does it mean to be an authentic Christian? What does it mean to embrace the life of Christ? And in that context, talking about the importance of Christ, they go on to say how important it is that if you do follow Jesus Christ, if you do embrace God in your life, that you show it by the way you live, by the way you treat each other. That in community there is this sense of love. And as the apostle says in Colossians chapter 3 verse 14, he says, in this new life of love that God has given to you, Make sure that love is your all-purpose garment that you put on, that you wear. And make sure that in your relationship, husbands, love your wives. Wives, submit to your husbands. Now, that word submit's a little bit of a problem for us because we read it as subjugation, right? But it's not that at all. It's like it's not demanding an equality because you have it already. Right. Paul makes that very clear in Ephesians in his letter. So what I want to talk about this morning, going on from where we were at the beginning, in our first session, talking about what love is as a gift from God, how does this impact the marriage relationship, your relationship with your partner? How do you demonstrate the love that God has given to you for each other and your love of God in your life? Right. And in talking about this, I'm aware of the fact that any moment now. What am I not? Oh. Okay. Many people today seem uncertain about the value and the meaning of marriage. And when it comes to that, some people say, well, you know, it's only a piece of paper. It's only a contract. And you can get out of a contract if you want to. Some people have the idea that really it's a socially outdated institution. You know, this is something, it's a relic from the past. There's an attitude that marriage is an optional lifestyle. It's just one of the options that brings couples together in relationship. There are some people who say, well, look, you know, the problem with marriage is that it's damaged. And that in many ways it's something which makes it very difficult for people to feel that they can achieve fulfillment and autonomy and independence. If you're in marriage, it's like you're in deadlock or gridlock or something, you know, and it prevents you from achieving your full potential. And there are some women and others who might say that marriage crushes a woman's identity. You know, so why would you want to do that to yourself in an age when freedom and liberty and independence is so prized in our society? And other people say, you know what, it's a financial drain. There's a lot of good reasons why, you know, we should forget about marriage and move on and recreate for ourselves. So I'm aware that in our society today that there are differing attitudes towards, you know, marriage and marriage relationship. Some of these things grow out of changes in people's attitudes towards freedom and independence. Some of them grow out of the fact that people have been hurt and damaged by their relationship of marriage to their partner. And in a sense, when you look at the statistics, intimate relationships today are experienced somewhat differently. 81% of people, adults, cohabitate before they get married. And there's a lot of people who cohabitate who never get married. 35% of all children are born outside of marriage. So marriage is not seen by some to be the only place in which one has children. 33% in our society end up divorcing, usually around 10 to 15 years of their relationship. And when you think about that, at least 800,000 families are affected as a result of this in their relationship. 60% of second marriages end up in divorce. in our society today, and many marriages and families are impacted by addictive behaviours, abuse, affairs and abandonment. So the current picture is a very diverse one when it comes to not only marriage but surviving in marriage. I was very interested a number of years ago in reading a book by Maggie Gallagher and Linda Waite, in which it was called The Case for Marriage, in which they were looking at their research into the effects or the benefits of marriage in individuals' lives. Now, these were two researchers in California, and what their research showed was that married people are healthier, wealthier, happier, and live longer. So they saw that as a benefit for marriage. They also said that people who are married tend to have better jobs, have better sex lives, are less likely to suicide, become alcoholics or drug addicts, become either perpetrators or victims of crime, or suffer domestic violence. And what their research also showed, that the children of happily married people are the greatest benefactors of a stable, strong, healthy marriage. They do better at school, they experience better health, they are less likely to divorce or to suffer sexual or physical abuse. So these were some of the benefits that their research underscored as the benefits of a good, happy marriage. So we ask this question, okay, so what does make for a happy, healthy marriage? Why is it that some marriages succeed and other marriages fail? What is the reason for that? And there is no single way to define a good marriage, but research has identified the kind of qualities, characteristics of a long-term, stable relationship. How do you protect a marriage from the risks of stress, negativity, and divorce? How do you allow love to guide you and to develop a strong, healthy, stable marriage? I'm interested that what Jesus had to say in Matthew 19. Now, Jesus was asked a question about divorce. And in the midst of this, he made some comments about his original intention, or God's original intention about marriage. And when he'd finished making these comments, he said this: not everyone is mature enough to live a married life. Okay, so it takes a certain degree of maturity to enter into a good relationship in marriage. It requires a certain aptitude and grace. Now, I like the way that the Message translates these verses, because I think it underscores that there are two things that are really important. One is your ability, your aptitude, your awareness, and secondly, your spirit, your grace. Whether you have the grace of God, grace in your heart, that enables you to use your skills wisely, your awareness wisely, that takes maturity. Right? It's not something that you can just rush into and, she be cool, mate, everything will work out right, beauty. But if you're capable of growing into the largeness of marriage, now it's interesting, this is described here as something that is a huge gift. A wholeness, right? Growing into the largeness of marriage, if you're capable of doing that, do it. It's a good thing. Which reminds me that when the story in Genesis unfolds, the reason that God placed man and woman in a relationship together was in order that they might grow and to become the fullness of a relationship with each other and with God. Going back to what Jesus had said previously in verses 4 and 6, this is what he said when he was answering about the marriage relationship and divorce. And he says, haven't you read in your Bible that the Creator originally made man and woman for each other. Right? We talked about this earlier. Male and female. And because of this, a man leaves his father and mother and is firmly bonded to his wife, and they become one flesh. No longer two bodies, but one. Right? And because God created this organic union of the two sexes, no one should desecrate his art by cutting them apart. You know, I like the way that Peterson, paraphrases this here, because I think he captures the sense of what Genesis is saying. That it's really significant, it's really important that we understand that what was God's intention when he created this relationship. And it suggests that a man would leave, be bonded to his wife, and they become one flesh, which, if you'll pardon me, there's an echo here for me, back to what we were saying. What were the three components that we listed that were important for a love relationship? Passion, commitment, intimacy. And it's almost like here I see that a man leaves his father. Now, this is interesting, because in the Hebrew agricultural context, a man didn't leave his mother and father. Everybody lived in the village, on the farm, together. But what this is suggesting is that when a man leaves, there's this, like, they become married, and they have, like, it is a boundary around them that this is now a family, right? They leave emotionally from the dependence upon their parents, and they now focus on their relationship as primary, right? And that's in order that they can be bonded together, that they can form this connection, this emotional connection with each other, and become one flesh. Now, this one flesh is a biblical expression for intimacy, for being emotionally connected with each other, for knowing each other at the deepest level, both physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I know when we read this, we think one flesh means, oh, of course, that means sex. That's the sexual relationship. No, that's just a little part of what's involved in intimacy, right? It's a very significant part, it's a good part, but it's not the full story. God's saying they become one, an organic union, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Right? So this was God's original plan as to how this relationship would work and be a benefit. Now, as I've said, this leaving is the creation of a distinct unit. The firmly bonded is the mutual commitment of the couple expressed in the formal marriage covenant. And the becoming one flesh is about the process of growth in intimacy, unity, and fulfillment across all aspects of their lives, including their sexual union. So I kind of summarise it like this. There are three components that are spoken of here. Connection, where they're mutually attracted and accept each other. They're committed. They make a mutual commitment to be faithful and to be loyal. And there's that sense of closeness, of mutual companionship and intimacy. Now, you only have to read to chapter 3 of Genesis and you discover how this all comes unravelled. And the ideal of this marriage becomes distorted, where instead of there being connection, there is disconnection. They run off and they hide from each other. Find fig leaves to cover up their embarrassment about their full exposure of themselves to one another. And there's a loss of passion, there's a loss of desire, a loss of respect. And there is disloyalty. They're now turning away from each other. blaming, shaming, denying, and there's deception, a lack of commitment. And as a result, in the relationship, there's now distance. The loss of intimacy, they become defensive, withdraw, negative, their identities become distorted. Now, that's just a summary of the story of Genesis and what God's intention for this relationship was all about. So, what we said this morning was that emotional connection is at the heart of marriage. The goal is to leave, to cleave, and to become one flesh, an organic union, an intimacy between two people that is the strength, the safe place for them in this relationship, this emotional connection. And one of the world's leading researchers, John Gottman, says this: an emotionally healthy marriage is a marriage that works not because the couple are smarter or richer or more astute psychologically, but it works because they are more in touch with their emotions and better able to understand how to honour and respect each other and their marriage. They are more emotionally competent and responsive to each other. So that's what I'm saying, that, the goal that God had in mind was that these two people would be in love with each other, which amounted to an emotional connection, understand each other's heart, be connected in a way that they could honour and respect one another as whole individuals. So in order to strengthen these emotional connections we mentioned before, it's about being available, giving your full attention and interest in the relationship, being physically and emotionally present, which develops that sense of closeness, to giving support and developing a partnership, sharing your needs and your hurts. And the second thing was to be responsive, to be available, to be responsive. And in this way, being approachable, allowing love to guide you and being an approachable person, showing care and empathy, or the technical term is used of attunement, being in sync with each other, right? Giving and receiving reassurances and expressing soft emotions, developing understanding. These are the things that strengthen those emotional connections. These are the kind of behaviours, if you like, attitudes and behaviours that build a sense of bond, a sense of connection. Being available and responsive fosters feelings of intimacy and security and trust. Now, there are two major problems that I see that grow out of this in a marriage relationship, and the reason why marriages get into difficulties. And we'll talk a little bit more this afternoon about conflict and some of the things that cause conflict in relationships and how to manage or deal with those. But I want to suggest this morning that there are two major problems. The first is being emotionally unavailable, right? You're either too busy, distracted by what's going on in your lives, that you don't have time for each other. You don't connect, right? Taking the relationship for granted. It's a little bit like the guy who is having an argument with his wife, and she says, "You don't love me." And he says, "Yeah, I love you." She said, "You never tell me that." He said, "Yeah, I do. When we got married 56 years ago, I told you I loved you, and I haven't changed my mind. I'll let you know if I do." I mean, seriously, that's like taking things for granted, right? You've got to invest yourself on a daily basis in making the relationship work. If you're emotionally unavailable, take it for granted, you got a problem, right? Being unwilling to invest time and energy in the relationship, which is like being neglectful. It's like, taking it for granted. And emotionally withdrawn and distant. You know, sometimes it's really difficult, isn't it? Because you can't give anything. Emotionally, you're in another space. That doesn't help to build the union. It doesn't help to build the sense of connection. And you know, one of the things I've found as a marriage counsellor over the years is that one of the things which causes a lot of stress in relationships is when one bottles up their emotion or never expresses their emotion, and anger and resentment can be something that can white ant a relationship very quickly. And it makes it very difficult to say, I'm here, I'm available, I'm present, when you're holding a lot inside that your partner knows is negative. And it's hard to live with. The second thing that I want to suggest is that not only being emotionally unavailable, but being emotionally unresponsive, where you simply don't listen, you're unable to share your thoughts and your feelings, you give no affirmation. You know, when was the last time? Honey, that was a great job. Yeah, well done. Good for you. You know, encouragement, emotional support, very important. These are the sort of simple things that bring a lot of marriages, most marriages, undone. It's not about, you know, maybe just some of the little things that happen. It's that feeling of, you're not here for me. You don't respond. You know, you're unwilling to resolve the conflict. You just, and we're going to talk about this afternoon. We're going to have a little fun too. So, you know, I mean, come prepared for a little bit of fun. So let me talk to you about, so how are some ways that we can make a marriage work? How do you develop intimacy and maturity in a relationship? How do you renew this sense of energy and motivation so you can become one flesh and be emotionally connected? And I want to turn to the scriptures. And I'm reading here, I've got the scriptures on the screen, from Ephesians, where in Ephesians chapter 4 and 5, the Apostle Paul, in addressing the church at Ephesus, where there was conflict, there was difference, there was struggling to know how to be in a Roman context world, and he made some suggestions on how you go about relating to each other. Now, I'm going to apply this specifically to marriage, but I think it applies to any relationship. If you want the love of God to be revealed in your relationship, if you want authentic Christianity, you know, this is the simple ways. Paul says, first of all, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient. Bear with one another in love. Now, what he's saying here are some positive things. Accentuate the positive. You know, love is a positive experience. And he's saying, you know, be humble. Now, humble means don't overestimate who you are and don't underestimate who you are. Accept who you are. And, you know, I was just thinking about people saying how wonderful Shane Warne was, you know, and he was. But he was flawed. And my reaction was, yeah, aren't we all? You know? And so what he's saying here is, be honest with yourself. Don't make yourself to be more than you are, and don't put yourself down. But be realistic. Because in a relationship, you can't be anything other than who you are. Right? And he says, be gentle. None of this, oh yes, so you know you're going to push me around. Well, no, don't come at it like that. He's saying, accentuate the positive. Be gentle. Now that doesn't mean be a pushover. It means be gentle in the way that you connect with each other. Don't be like one of those, you know, tanks that are driving down the street with all guns blazing. You know, that's not a way to connect. Paul's saying accentuate the positive. And you know what that involves is accepting one another for who you are, respecting each other, being tolerant of your differences, and working towards a sense of togetherness. And that's what Paul's suggesting here. The first thing that's important is be positive. Accentuate the positive things. You know what? There's nothing worse than living with somebody who's negative. It's always bad. It's always not right. It's always not good enough. You know? That's the best way to start white-anting a relationship to the place where you say, you know what, I'd be better off not around here. So if you happen to be one of those people who tend towards negativity, you know, the glass half empty sort of person, take a good look, because that's not going to build a good, positive relationship. The second thing that Paul says here is we need to communicate effectively. Now, everybody says communication. I mean, most of the people that walk through the door to see a marriage counsellor, when you say, what's the problem? Well, we just don't communicate. And on one occasion, when a couple came to see me, I asked them a question. They said, well, we don't communicate. And I sort of snickered and laughed a little bit. And they said, it's not funny. And I said, no, I'm sorry, I did. It struck me as a little bit sort of humorous that two people who don't talk to each other admit that they had a problem. They agreed on the fact that they had a problem. They must have communicated that. They agreed to go and see somebody on the same night about the same problem. So you don't communicate. No. What you don't understand is there are some things we don't communicate about. 70% of people say that's the problem. But what I've discovered is that's just the surface. It's what they don't talk about that are the issues, see? And Paul's saying here, he says, look, speak the truth in love. Now, it's possible to say the truth, but not to say it with gentleness or with love, right? And Paul's saying that's not the way to build a good love relationship. We will in all things grow up into Him, that is Christ, if we speak the truth in love. Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. No, it doesn't give me any lee room there, does it, eh? But only what is helpful for building others up. In other words, affirmation, encouragement, seeing the best in the other person, right? If you're going to communicate, make it beneficial to those who listen. Right? And so watch the way you talk, because each word is a gift. And listen in order to connect. Now, I have a little expression which says, you know, play back before you feedback. In other words, did I hear you right? You're saying this. Make sure I got the message correct. Then I'll give you what I think about that, how I respond to it. That's good active listening. Affirm and encourage one another. And that's all I put there. So, okay, number 3. Deal with your anger and conflict. Sometimes I have listed this as stop recycling your garbage. Right? In other words, what I'm saying is somehow we get into this business of, you know, same old argument over and over again, and each time it just gets a little deeper, just a little bit deeper down in the hole. And many of us, and I'm going to talk about this afternoon, many of us don't know how to deal with conflict effectively because we've never been taught. We do it the way we've learnt to do it, either by observing or reacting to how the place we grew up. If mum and dad had a big Barney, you know, well, that's how you do it. Or not, or never going to do it like that ever. So we'll talk about that more this afternoon. But here's what Paul says in Ephesians 4:22. He says, be made new in the attitude of your mind. Therefore, each of you put off falsehood and speak truthfully. In your anger, do not sin. Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. I'm going to talk about anger and conflict this afternoon. And, you know, openly confront the ghosts of the past. your fears, your addictions, the things that are stumbling blocks in the relationship. Confront them. Don't keep hiding them or living with ghosts of the past. This is one sure way to undermine a relationship. It's also important to not walk away from conflict, but to resolve it. And, I could tell you a lot of marriages that I've seen, at least, that have been destroyed, not because of the conflict, but because they didn't know how to deal with the difference. They just walked away from it. Resolve your feelings of anger and bitterness and resentment so that you can move on and be willing to acknowledge your mistakes and failings. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing the apostle says is demonstrate kindness and compassion and forgiveness. These are aspects of how love shows itself. Right? And he says this, get rid of all bitterness, rage and anger, brawling and slander. Okay, he's probably covered most of it right there. All the negative stuff. Along with any form of malice. Be kind and compassionate, just as in Christ God forgave you. So this is embracing the love of God in a practical way that demonstrates itself in a willingness to be kind and forgiving. Forgiveness is not easy. I think, for me, I put it this way, I think that forgiveness is an act of grace. The human heart doesn't naturally want to forgive. What I want is revenge, right? And sometimes, to come to the point of forgiveness is a deal breaker when it comes to saving a marriage. Because things happen, you get hurt, you misunderstand, and it's hard to say, I'm sorry. Short little, 6, 7 letters, that's all. I'm sorry. And mean it. Now, I remember some years ago, a couple came to see me, and I said, so what do you want to talk about? And they said, well, we don't know where to go. We've hit the wall. I said, so what happened? How did you hit the wall? He said, well, she's on my back all the time, complaining. And I said, about what? Well, she's accusing me of having an affair. I said, oh, well, that's only a little thing, isn't it? No, he said, it's not. For her, she's nagging the whole time, and it shut down the relationship. I said, okay, so how did this happen? He said, didn't happen. So now I've got, it did, it didn't. It's like playing tennis, back and forwards, like who's right, who's wrong. He said, she said. Well, the story, just to quickly finish this, is that he was working in Sabbath school with another woman who they got kind of involved with, with each other. And she said, everyone in the church has noticed, talked about it, and I'm hurt. This is unacceptable. I'm not. It didn't happen. And I said, so you're saying it didn't happen? He said, I never had sex with the woman. I thought, oh, I've heard that before. And I said, well, you don't have to have sex to be unfaithful to your partner. Did you, as you're working together, did you become a little kind of emotionally involved? He said, well, yeah, you can't, you can't work together and not, but I said, well, now hang on a minute. So you have the idea that, she said, I can't forgive it. So, for the next 2 weeks, we just danced around the floor, same old stuff. Nobody would make, and I said, listen, we've talked about this for long enough. I've heard both sides of the story. I understand. I don't know if I'm hearing all the truth, but what I'm hearing, I understand. And you know what? There's only one thing that you two need to do if you want this marriage. And that is, you need to go home and you need to forgive each other and get on with the marriage. Well, he wasn't very happy about that idea. And I don't think she was either, because the door slammed as they left. And I thought, well, maybe that was poor therapy, I don't know, but, they needed to confront that issue in my mind. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call. They said, we'd like to see you. I thought, oh, wow, okay. So they came in and they had a big smile over their faces, and I said, so I don't understand, like you're walking in here with a big smile, you want to see me, what happened? They said, oh, you'll never believe it. I said, no, I probably won't, but sit down, you're going to tell me anyway. So they sat down and they said, it was really interesting. This is a true story. I know it's hard to believe, but they said, you know what? On Sabbath, we went to church, and guess what the preacher preached about? Forgiveness. And it was interesting because he was sitting right there, well, not right there, but, at the end of the seat, and she was sitting there, and there was no one in between. And as the preacher preached, I'm finding this hard to believe at this point, right? They started to look at each other and move closer together bit by bit until when they finally finished the sermon, they were sitting together in the middle of the pew. And he turned to her when the sermon finished and said, let's get out of here before they sing the hymn so we don't have to talk to anybody. So they left. They went home. They sat down at the kitchen table, him there, her here, across the table. 3 hours they talked to each other, put all their stuff on the table, and they dealt with it and forgave each other. And we came today to tell you thanks for helping us, because we've found the magic again. And I said, hang on, you don't thank me for that. You did the work, and God blessed you with the grace to forgive. See? That's what Paul's talking about. He's talking about the need to not hold grudges, to not hang on to stuff, because it will destroy you. Have a spirit of forgiveness and a willingness to go on. Be gentle, be sensitive, be forgiving. Number 5 I put down here because Paul says, live a life of love just as Christ loved us, but among you there must not be any hint of sexual immorality, any kind of impurity or greed. Nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking. So here what I'm saying is that I have a sense Paul's saying, maintain your boundaries, your personal boundaries. Don't violate the relationship that you have with each other. Make sure that you're very clear about your commitment to this family circle, to this marriage, right? It's so important that you define your boundaries and you avoid using or abusing people, religion, or things just for what you want to get out of them. And Paul says, be filled with the Spirit. Celebrate. Sing and make music in your heart to the Lord, always giving thanks. That sounds to me like Paul saying, in your relationship, celebrate love as a gift from God. Celebrate it. Do the things that make you feel that you can honour and you can respect and you can celebrate together the beautiful benefits and joy that comes from your marriage, your relationship. Love extravagantly. Give expression to your gratitude. Release a sense of joyfulness. And the last thing, he says, be committed to each other and to the relationship. What he's saying here is that here's this famous verse which in the church the Christian church has argued over for so long. Submit to one another out of reverence. Now, it's interesting because most people start reading the stuff about marriage relationships from verse 22, and they forget about verse 21, which says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. That sounds like a loving relationship, being submitted as the Lord would love. And husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church. Cherish and honour and support each other, a commitment that involves dedication and constraint. And that's some of the clues on how you build a happy, healthy relationship. It's interesting, but in my understanding, those who are marriage researchers would identify that they are the very, very qualities, characteristics of a good, healthy relationship. A marriage that's likely to last, to thrive, and to bring joy and happiness into the lives of the two partners and to their family. So this is just a little bit about how love is expressed in our relationship at home. And Paul goes on to talk about how that also affects the way we parent and the way we, in our work relationships. Love is supreme. That's what God's kingdom is about. Turning us from our self-centered focus to a focus on His love, which the Spirit brings into our lives. May God bless you, each one, as you think about your marriage, your relationships, that you might honour the love that God has placed in your heart by dealing with each other in a genuine, gentle, loving way. Do we have a hymn? Are we going to sing? Okay.
Let's stand up, then we will together sing the song 655, Happy the Home.
Amen.
Dr. Bryan, thank you so much. We've been blessed, but here is not end of story. Just reminder, now is about 30 around there. We have plenty of time to eat delicious food. Anything regarding that? Can you
Scotty said that you go to Waitara sometimes?
Yeah, most of the time.
Do you?
So my membership's there.
Yep,
I
yep.
come here about every 4 to 6 weeks to help them out with. I'm on the music roster.
Oh, okay.
So they don't have a lot of units in this church, so
No, no.
we have plenty of fun.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, sharing the gift around, eh?
Yeah, that's what it's for.
Very good.
Thank you.
Joshua, first you choose Thomas for okay. No running to church.
No.
Okay?
There's so many chairs.
Okay, so let's go out of here. No running to church. Come on.
No, we're running.
You're gonna signature to this. I don't believe it. As soon as you walk out, you're just gonna start running. I know you.
And we gotta leave you. We gotta leave you.
We're gonna go home.
We just want to play a little bit football.
invitation